How would you like to sell your house faster and for more money without using a real estate agent? Well, that's entirely possible, and that's exactly what we're going to cover today. Because you might be wanting to do this because you don't have enough equity in the home. Or you might think that it's not that difficult to do. Or you might just hate real estate agents, and that's okay. I'm not here to judge you. What I am going to do is I'm going to give you all the information that you need to sell your house without using an agent. All right, so let's begin. Selling your house without a real estate agent is typically known as a FSBO, for sale by owner, which means that there's no real estate agent involved in the transaction, both from the buyer side and the seller side. So in other words, you have a homeowner that wants to sell their house and a future homeowner, aka a buyer, that wants to buy that house. So for this particular video, I'm only going to address the listing side, aka the homeowner side. I'm not going to get too much into the details of the buyer side. I'm really more focused on you, the homeowner, right now. Now, the first thing that I want you to focus on is preparing your home for sale. There are certain things that you want to do to your property to make it sellable, because your home presentation matters. Not only is it going to attract more potential buyers, but you're going to have buyers give you a higher offer price if it presents well. Now, the first thing that I encourage you to do is to declutter, depersonalize, and deep clean. As the name suggests, with decluttering, you're removing things out of the property. That could be toys, that could be clothes, that could be random boxes that just find themselves in the corner. It could be excess furniture. We want to create additional space, because when a potential buyer comes in, you want them to get the feel that the room is actually larger than it actually is. Now, when it comes to depersonalizing, that means taking down family portraits. And that could also mean taking down your political beliefs from the wall. Now, I'm not going to touch that topic with a 10-foot pole, but just to understand, the more neutral that we make our home, the more people that are going to be attracted to it. And once you've decluttered and depersonalized, do a deep cleaning. This means you or a professional company addressing every inch of your home. The window seals, the ceiling fans, shelves, they all accumulate dust, and we got to get rid of it. Now, a tip that I like to give homeowners as I'm taking a listing appointment is, as they're throwing things out and decluttering and doing a lot of different things to get their homes ready, is to focus on creating 4 distinct piles. The first pile is going to be your trash pile. You're going to aggregate all the things that you intend to throw away and eventually move it down to the curb so the city takes it away. The second pile is your donation pile. Things that you want to donate, you're going to put in this pile. The third pile is your garage sale pile. There are certain things that you don't really want to donate, but you intend to sell in a garage sale. So you're going to have that pile for that. And the fourth pile is going to be your personal pile. This is where you're going to put all the things that you depersonalize from the house and put in one central location. Now, typically these piles end up being in the garage, where they're out of the way from the actual home. Now, that's just getting started. We're still preparing our home for sale. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to do is make any necessary repairs and upgrades. Fix the small issues like leaky faucets, broken light fixtures, squeaky doors. Buyers often notice these tiny things. So don't give them a reason to notice these things and then bring them up in negotiation. Now, we can do a whole video on upgrades that make sense, that will actually increase the value of your home, and also upgrades that do not make sense. So if you want me to make that video, let me know in the comment section down below. But for our purposes today, we're just going to keep it simple. And the one thing that I encourage you to do that's going to give you that return on investment is painting your house. But let me be more specific, painting your house in a neutral paint color. Avoid that hot pink. Painting a few rooms in your house is one of the most cost-effective ways for you to upgrade your home and actually see value when you sell your house. Again, there's a lot here in the upgrades that you should be making and the upgrades that don't bring you any money. So if you want me to make that video, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, the third thing to do as you're preparing your home is to boost the curb appeal. When somebody drives up to your home, what's the first thing that they see? Well, they see the lawn, the landscaping, and the entrance. Make sure to address those, because first impressions matter. So if you're anything like me that takes weeks and weeks and weeks before you go outside and mow the lawn, either hire somebody to do that or spend that extra time, at least for these couple of days that you're on the market, to go and take care of that lawn. Same thing with your landscaping. If you have dead bushes, let's get those out of there. If you haven't trimmed the bushes, then go ahead and take care of that as well. Add some fresh mulch or add some seasonal flowers, even though never in your life Have you actually had a flower bed? Now would be a really good time to start. And of course, address that front entrance. Go ahead and power wash that thing and also paint it because, as you know, the sun does beat it up quite a bit. So make everything possible to make that front entrance a very good first impression. And the last thing that I want to say in this particular department of getting your home for sale is something that we as homeowners often overlook. And that is getting our paperwork in order. Go and find that paperwork that the title company gave you when you bought the house that you have no idea where it's at because you never opened. Go and find who your mortgage servicer is, your homeowner's information and their contact. And let's face it, if you're selling your house, chances are you're probably going to go and buy another one. So you're going to need to get some additional documentation anyway. This means go and find those W-2s, those bank statements, tax returns, anything that has to do with financials, you're going to need to find them. Which again, I'm not addressing the buyer side right now, but I did want to throw that in because it's a necessary thing even when you're selling. And the pro tip that I want to give here in this category of preparing your home for sale is to give yourself time. Don't try to do this all at once. That's a really good way to get frustrated. That's a really good way to lose track of what you're actually trying to do. Also, that's a really good way to overpay because chances are if you're not using a real estate agent and you're trying to do this yourself, you are price sensitive and there's nothing wrong with that. But understand that if you're trying to get everything done at once, well, you're compressing the time that's allowed to do that, which means you're not giving yourself time to price shop. So you're not going to be able to price shop the power washing that you might want to be doing. You might not give yourself enough time to do the garage sale and end up losing some money that way. So give yourself a few weeks to get your home prepared. And now that you have your home ready to go, it's time to set the sales price. This one pricing decision is going to affect so much of what happens in the following steps. So we really need to spend our time here because if you price your home too high, chances are fewer people are going to go out and see the property, which means fewer people are going to give you offers. They're going to see a home that is radically overpriced and see you as a homeowner that is unreasonable. Now, of course, that's not who you are. We all want to maximize the value that we have in our hands, in this case, with our real estate. But perception is reality. So if we overprice our property, it's going to stay on the market and it's going to ultimately require us to lower the value, ultimately selling for less than what we should have. Now, on the other side of the equation, you also have some risks if you underprice your home. Because if you underprice your home, either because you meant to or because you didn't know any better, you're really hoping that your marketing draws enough attention to where the market realizes that, hey, this home is undervalued, which in a healthy market is going to mean more and more people are going to come and see that property and give you offer after offer after offer. But here again, you're banking on the fact that you're going to drive so much attention to that property, so much eyeballs to the property that the market is going to find out that it's underpriced. So all that to say is you want to price that home right from the beginning. Don't overprice or underprice. And here's exactly how to do that. Step number one, do not use Zillow, Homes.com, or any other online valuation tool to value your home. Relying solely on what those algorithms tell you that the value of your home is a really good way to not get it right. What you actually want to do is study comparable sales in your area. In other words, run comps. Look at the homes that recently sold in your neighborhood, especially those similar to yours in terms of size, condition, and features. Pay attention to square footage, the number of beds, the number of baths. Does it have a pool? Does it not? Have there been upgrades? Geographically, the closer that these homes are to your property, the stronger comp that you have. Same thing when it comes to how long ago this sale was. If you're in a pretty urban area, give yourself 0.25 to about half a mile radius from your home. Also go back in time about 90 days to present and see how many sales were made during that time frame. Now, these are general rules of thumb. If you don't have enough comparables, then widen your geography. So go from 0.5 miles to a mile. If there hasn't been a ton of sales in the last 90 days, go to 120, then 150, then 180. But just know the further that you get away from the subject property, aka your home, the weaker the comps become. At the end of the day, you're going to want about 3 to 5 comps that are very similar to your home that you can use as a guide to price your home out. So as an example, if you find that the 3 closest comps to your home are selling for $400,000, give or take a couple thousand, well, your home's probably around that $400,000 mark. Now, here's the thing. Where do you find this sales information? That's one of the biggest questions that I get all the time. Well, since I practice real estate in Texas, I have a little bit of a hurdle because Texas is a non-disclosure state, meaning that when a home sells between two private parties, they are not legally required to disclose what they sold that house for. Now, of course, every state is different, so it might be easier for you if you're watching this from another state. But here in Texas, you're relying on two primary ways to find this information. Number one is by now going to the Zillows of the world and see if somebody reported what the sales price was. Because as an example, we as real estate agents, we get asked by Zillow, hey, we noticed that you sold that house on 123 Main Street. What'd you sell it for? And many agents will actually disclose that information. Now, the second way that you find the actual sales price of a home that you're using as a comp is by using the MLS. The multiple listing service is something that real estate agents have access to, which is the system that we use to put our listings, which will then syndicate into hundreds of websites like the Zillows, the Trulias, the Realtor.coms of the world. And once we sell that home, we actually have to disclose what we sold that property for. So I'll give you an example. A recent home that we sold, we put it on the market for $330,000. But we did that strategically because we wanted to bring in some additional offers. We knew that the home could fetch a little bit more. And at the end of the day, it did. The home actually sold for $348,000. So in the public's eye, aka Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Homes.com, and all the other websites, it's going to show that the property was marketed and listed at $330,000, but the actual sales price was actually $348,000. So that's what I, as a listing agent, have to put into the MLS. And at the same time, I, as a real estate agent, don't have to disclose that to Zillow when they email me asking, hey, what did you sell this house for? All that to say is be careful where you get your comps from. Now, the easiest thing that I could tell you to do is to reach out to your preferred real estate agent and ask them what their opinion is of the value of your home. Now, please be upfront with them. If you're not planning to use them as your listing agent, that's totally fine, but also recognize that the favor that you're asking them for costs them thousands of dollars to be in a position to do for you, because they got their license, they're paying brokerage fees, they're paying association fees, just have that access that you're asking for. So in fairness to my peers, I encourage you to compensate them in some way. And I'm not saying that you compensate them with money. I'm just saying compensate them with the truth. Asking your realtor friend what they think the value of your home is totally fair, but please be fair with them in disclosing that, hey, I have no plans to use you as a listing agent. I just need a professional opinion on what you think the value of the home is. Now that's quote unquote the free method, asking a professional real estate agent what they think the value of your home is, so you know the sales price. But the more formal way that is going to cost you, but it's well worth the investment, is getting an actual appraisal on your home. Hiring a professional appraisal that will actually do the appraisal for your property, the same appraiser that lenders would be using to appraise the value of your home, is totally fair game. Now that appraisal is going to cost you several $100s, talking over $500 for sure. It's just going to depend on the appraiser that you use and also the size of your home. Now here again, this is a very important decision. This one decision is going to affect everything else. It's going to be super critical that you get this as close to right, quote unquote, right, as possible. Hey, Future Jaime here. Sorry for that jump scare. As I was reviewing the video that my incredible editor is putting together, I missed one important part. And that is to not use the value that you see in the Central Appraisal District. Do not use the value that the CAD, the Central Appraisal District, has for your home. And the reason for that is because that value is actually the assessed value of your actual market value. Meaning the market value of your home is what somebody can actually purchase your property for. The assessed value is what you're being taxed on. And most of the time, this assessed value is going to be lower, if not substantially lower, than the market value. In other words, you run the risk of radically underpricing your home. And if, as mentioned before, we don't get enough exposure to that property, we're in danger of losing out on thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. All right, that was way too important for me just to let go. So let's jump back into it. So if I was in your shoes and if I didn't have the skill set that I have now, the experience that I have, and I wasn't a real estate agent, I would actually get an appraisal. I would invest in that appraisal because it's going to allow me to price that home accurately to start. And it's also going to benefit me down the road once we're under contract. More on that later. Now, let me give you an example of pricing things wrong. Take this property as an example. This property hit the market August 13th at $425,900. 13 days later, they dropped the price $6,000. 10 days later, they dropped another $10,000 off the asking price. And a week after that, they dropped it another $10,000. And here's the dirty little secret that I'm going to let you in on. This home right now is in pending status for $380,000, $20,000 than what you're seeing on the actual online portals right now. The reason that I know this information is because I myself am buying this home and the appraisal's already come back. More on that later. And the appraisal is already telling me that the value of the home was actually more than what I put it under contract for, about $10,000 more. So had this home been priced differently around the $390,000 mark, chances are that this home would have had enough demand to where it would have sold for over $400,000. Now, it's impossible to know that for a fact, but what we do know is that this home was overpriced. And at any point in time, the market can change. So that's why it's important that you stay in tune with the market, especially if you're going to go at it alone. Because even experienced real estate agents, which is who listed this property, which I think the world of her, even experienced agents may not get it right the first time. A lot of it has to do with the market. All right, so now that you have your home ready for sale and the price that you want for it, it's time to get the word out. It's time for step number 3, which is marketing the home. The key here is exposure. You need as many eyeballs on the property as possible. More eyes on the property is going to mean more demand, more appointments, more offers, and ultimately a higher sales price. So the only question you need to ask yourself is, how can I get this home in front of as many people as possible? Now, before I share the platforms that you should be using, let's focus on what you need to have first and foremost, and that is professional photography. Listen, this is another key hire that you really want to have, and that is hiring a professional photographer for $100 to $200 to come and take professional pictures. This is technically the first impression that people are going to have of your home, so make it count. Don't use pictures that look like they were taken from a flip phone. Also, remember that on picture day, you want your home as show ready as possible. It needs to be decluttered, depersonalized, it needs to be clean, it needs to be ready to go. Now, while I don't advise it, I technically have to say that yes, you can use your iPhone. Yes, you can use your Android to take the pictures yourself. Now, do I advise it? I do not. The photography is actually a really good return on investment. But if you're going to do it anyway, regardless of my recommendation, make sure that your rooms are very well lit. Ensure that you take pictures of key features that are going to be important for potential buyers. So focus on the living spaces, the bathrooms, the kitchens, the backyard, things that are going to be important for them. Also remember, you're marketing this yourself, so you need to know the details of your home, which means that you want to know the features of your home. You want to know the basic information such as square feet, number of bedrooms, number of baths, number of living spaces, and on and on. Now, that type of information you probably already have because you bought that property at some point. So there's probably a no listing from when it was sold to begin with. Or you can go into your central appraisal district and see what the CAD has in relation to your property. So as an example, I personally am in Tarrant County and most of my investment properties are as well. So I can just log on to the Tarrant Appraisal District and look up the descriptions of my properties. Now, full disclosure, they're not always going to be right, but it's at least a good starting point. Now, that's just the basic description of the property itself. You also want to write a listing description, which is where you emphasize what is unique about your property. You want to call out any renovations that you've done, any updates that you've made, and really identify things that aren't going to be as easy to quantify. And if you're struggling for words to find that ideal listing description, then just go to ChatGPT and ask it to write you one. Now, funny story, one of my startups actually started as a listing description tool for realtors. Now, this was back before ChatGPT and we were getting a ton of usage from realtors. So it historically has been a challenging thing to do, but not so much anymore. Now it's extremely easy to write that listing description. Now, again, we're still in step number 3, and that is marketing the home. And because you do not have a real estate agent that's going to place your home on the multiple listing service, aka the MLS, which syndicates to hundreds of websites, you're responsible for placing your home on the online portals. So you're gonna wanna publish your home on as many websites as possible. You're gonna wanna put it on forsalebyowner.com, FSBO.com, including Zillow.com. Place it on the online portals that's gonna have distribution of people that are looking to buy. And don't just stop there. Use marketplaces like Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Those are still very effective places to market your home. In fact, me as a real estate agent, I actually make it a practice to put all the homes that I have available for sale as listings. I make it a practice to put those on Facebook Marketplace regularly, as well as Craigslist. I've sold homes on both platforms and they absolutely work. And don't be shy of marketing your home on social media altogether. Post that you're selling your house on your personal profile and ask your friends and family to share that post, because you never know who might be interested. So remember, the more eyes that you get on that home, the more offers that you're going to receive and the higher that you're going to be able to sell that home for. Now, when you're marketing your home, something that you must not forget is using your for sale by owner yard signs. This is a very inexpensive sign that you can get from Lowe's or Home Depot. So make sure that you grab at least one of them, because when you sell your home without a real estate agent, these yard signs matter. They matter way more when you're selling your house as a FSBO than if you were listed with the real estate agent, because most of the buyers that the real estate agent is going to bring to you is going to come from online portals. And for you as a for sale by owner, you're not going to have as much of a reach, given that you don't have access to the MLS. So a good amount of the traffic is actually going to be people that are driving by. All right, so now that the world knows that your home is available for sale, it's time to show it to potential buyers. And one of the most important rules that you must remember when your home is listed is that you need to be show ready 24/7, meaning at any point in time, a potential buyer may call you and may want to drop by to see the home. Now, you might be at work or might be running errands or might be doing something else. So depending how much of a heads up you get, you might not have time to come back and get the home ready to go. So before you leave for work, try to leave your home as presentable as possible. Now, something I really want you to take serious when you're selling your home without a real estate agent is security. Because keep in mind, up until 2 seconds ago, before they called you, you had no earthly idea who these people are. And now they're wanting to come into your home and you have no background check on them. You have no idea who they are, what they're about, what their motives are. So you need to be careful. Now, of course, I want you to qualify these potential buyers before you ever invite them to your home. More on that later, but I really want to emphasize that this is a key difference between having a real estate agent that does this on your behalf versus you doing this yourself. Because when you list your home with a real estate agent, chances are that it's going to be another real estate agent that is showing your property to a potential buyer. So in that setting, it's real estate professionals that are accompanying potential buyers into your home. And it's these same realtors that have qualified these potential buyers. So while stuff can absolutely still happen, it really minimizes the potential that anything bad would. Now, something that you might consider as a for sale by owner is actually doing for sale by owner open houses. Open houses are not exclusive to us real estate agents. We're pretty good at them because that's one of the strategies that a lot of our brokers teach us when we first start out. But it's not something that only real estate agents have to do. You yourself can host open houses every single weekend. You can go back to Lowe's, you can go back to Home Depot and buy 6 to 8 open house signs and then put them up the morning that you're going to be doing that open house and just host your open house for a few hours. Now, if I was in your shoes, I would actually allow a real estate agent to host that open house for me. Now, how does that work? Well, a lot of real estate agents would love to host an open house because it gives a real estate agent the opportunity to speak to potential home buyers that are out there on Saturdays and Sundays actively looking for a home. So the benefit for the realtor is that they're able to leverage that house to attract potential buyers that they can work with the understanding that if somebody comes to the open house and actually wants to put an offer on that house, then the real estate agent and the homeowner have already agreed that that's going to be somebody that the homeowner works with directly. So they don't have to buy these open house signs. And also, if a real estate agent does it, well, the real estate agent has access to the MLS, so they can broadcast that open house. And to leverage this strategy, generally you're going to be asked to sign a 1-day listing contract, but you're going to want to connect with the real estate agent to see all the details on how to do that. Most of your potential buyers are going to come in the form of private showings. They're going to see your FSBO on Zillow, or they're they're going to be driving by and they're going to give you a call. They're going to ask if the home is still available for sale. They're going to ask for the price. They're going to ask for additional details. So what I encourage you to do as a for sale by owner is prepare two things. Number one, a text that details everything about the property, because remember, they just called you, so you're going to have their phone number. And the second thing that I want you to prepare is a listing video. Just go through your home and record everything and then upload that to YouTube as an unlisted video. And now you're going to have a URL that you can send to that potential buyer. Those two things are going to save you so much time. That first text that's going to detail everything about your house is simple to copy and paste. So you can just send that to everybody that calls or everybody that texts. And that video is also going to save you and a potential buyer a ton of time, because now they'll be able to see in video form what the inside actually looks like. Now, those are two things that you're going to want to have regardless. But when you're on the phone with these potential buyers, you want to qualify them. Because remember, up until 2 seconds ago before they called you, you had no earthly idea who they were. So you're going to want to qualify the leads the same way that we as real estate agents qualify them ourselves. What's their motivation? What's their timeline? Are they making money? Do they have money for a down payment? What's their credit score like? Now, I know that you don't do this for a living, so it might feel a little bit awkward to ask for these things. But remember, this is your home. You do want to see how viable it is, whoever it is that's calling you, that they're going to actually be able to purchase your home. So if you want the quick and dirty of how to qualify the people that are calling you, just try to understand their motivation and see if they're pre-qualified for a loan. And because you are selling this house without a real estate agent, you're going to want to be at that home to tour the potential buyers around. I do not recommend that you leave the house. Remember, these are people that you have no earthly idea who they are. Now, there might be instances where you as a for sale by owner might be willing to pay a buyer's agent commission if they bring you a buyer. So in the event that you are willing to work with buyer's agents that are going to bring you a pre-qualified buyer, then you can operate slightly different. In that instance, if a potential buyer is working with the real estate professional, then consider using a lockbox out front and then sharing that code to the real estate agent, which they will use to access the key and tour the buyer around. Which here again means that you need to leave your home show ready, which means locking up your valuables, open the windows so you have additional lighting, leave your lights on, and just make it as presentable as possible. Now, again, this is totally optional if you are working with buyer's agents. Now, something that you want to be aware of whenever you're marketing your home is that you want to hype it up as much as possible without stretching the truth. Share as much objective information as possible. Really play up the upgrades that you made and when you made those upgrades. And something that you're still going to need to do, regardless if you're working with the real estate agent or not working with the real estate agent, is having a seller's disclosure ready. Remember, I practice real estate here in Texas, so we are governed by the Texas Property Code. And Section 5 within the Texas Property Code requires homeowners to fill out a seller's disclosure, where you have to share anything and everything that you know about the property. What it has, what it doesn't have, has the roof been replaced, has there been foundation issues, as much information as you could possibly think is gonna be asked in that particular seller's disclosure. So disclose, disclose, disclose. If you have something that you're just not sure if it should be on the disclosure, put it on there. Because if you don't disclose, you are opening yourself up from a liability perspective. Because don't think simply because you sold your home, everything else is over. No, you are still responsible a few years after the sale for things that you might not have disclosed. So if you're trying to cover something up and it was proven later on that you knew that there was something wrong with the property and you did not disclose it, you're in trouble. So not only is disclosing the ethical thing to do, it can come with some legal repercussions if you don't. And even for the transaction itself, it's to your benefit to disclose as much as possible. Because the more that you disclose up front, the more likely that once you're under contract, that home is actually going to sell. And the less misunderstandings you're gonna have while under contract. All right, so at this point, if you've done everything that we've discussed, at least in a very purposeful way, you're gonna get offers. If you prepared your home, you priced it right, you marketed it, and allowed potential buyers to come and see it, you should expect a few offers coming in. So congratulations, you're gonna be in a really good spot. Now what happens next is reviewing and negotiating those offers. Now, there's several ways to handle the actual contracts and the offers, but before we even touch that, I really want to preface this with all of the offers that you're getting, regardless if they are verbal, regardless if they're on a napkin, regardless if they're on a contract that you wrote up or a buyer happens to have, regardless of that, please verify finances. There's no sense in you talking shop with anybody that can't afford your home. Now, that sounds a little bit callous, but remember, you're selling by owner. So a lot of the conversations that are time wasters, let's be real, a lot of those conversations, if you were with a real estate agent, they wouldn't make it to you for the most part. So this is really where you want to get comfortable asking the questions up front. Do you have a pre-qualification letter, or can you verify that you have enough money in the bank to purchase this house cash? So once you ask for that verification that they have the funds to do what they say they're going to do, which is buy your house, go ahead and ask for documentation, ask for proof. If they're going to get financed, please ask them to send you the pre-approval or pre-qualification letter from their lender, and make sure to call that lender to verify that, one, it's a real bank, and two, that the lender feels comfortable with the information that has been presented to them from the potential buyer that they can actually close. Now, if they're buying cash, they should be able to provide documentation proving that they have enough funds in some bank, regardless of which one it happens to be, and present that to you. You can ask the potential buyer for a letter from the bank stating that yes, they are clients of that bank and that they have enough funds to cover this purchase. At the end of the day, it's going to be your judgment call, how much you actually want to verify up front. If you want to take it to the super extreme where you're asking for everything, or if a simple letter or a simple statement or whatever it is that you want to ask for is enough for you, then again, it's your judgment call, but certainly have something in place to verify some finances. Now, the types of offers that you get are going to vary across the board, but primarily you're going to have the buyer's agent offers. In other words, if you are willing to compensate buyer agents that bring you a buyer, then they're most likely going to have the contract already written up that is used by the real estate commission that they're a part of. So as an example, since I am in Texas, the real estate commission does give us contracts that have been used for thousands of transactions by hundreds of thousands of agents over time. And they get updated quite often. So that template or that form or that contract that comes into your inbox, for the most part, has been tried and tested. The only thing that changes is the numbers that were filled out by the real estate agent on behalf of that potential buyer. Now, if you're not offering commission to buyer's agents, then that's okay as well. You are going to have some buyer agents that are still going to present offers to you, knowing that the buyer themselves are going to pay them directly. But for the most part, if you're selling by owner, aka without a real estate agent, then you're going to get individual buyers reaching out to you. Thus, what I suggest to you is to have a contract ready. Get with an attorney to create a real estate contract for you, or go online and find a real estate contract that you are comfortable with. And then ask the potential buyer to fill in the details, to fill in the terms that they feel comfortable offering. And I encourage you to do it this way, where you're getting the contract ahead of time and asking potential buyers to fill it out, then having 5 individual buyers submit 5 individual contracts that you have to read, that you have to understand, really try to get right with all the different terms. So not only are you negotiating the transaction altogether, but you're trying to understand each and every one of those contracts, which becomes quite challenging. But here again, you can handle it however you want. I'm just giving you the simplest way to do it. Now, the best case scenario is that you did such a good job on the previous steps that you get multiple offers, which in and of itself is fantastic, because that means you have demand. That means you have competition that's going to generally drive the price of your home up. The challenge with receiving multiple offers is comparing each and every one of those. That can get confusing. There's certain terms that can get a little bit murky. So the best thing that I can tell you is go down to the description and download our multiple offer comparison tool. This multiple offer net sheet is the exact same one that we here internally use with our clients. Take this recent home sale that we just did. We received 4 offers within a span of 24 hours. And we're quickly able to plug in all of the details on each one of those offers to visually see which one made more sense for our clients. So I am linking that down in the description, so make sure that you check it out. Now, here again, I am in Texas, so it's geared more towards Texas real estate, but with a few changes here and there, you can adopt it to Florida, California, New York, Illinois, and on and on. But I digress. Whenever you're reviewing offers, it's not always about the price. Is it super important? 100% it is, but it's not always about the price. The one thing that you're really trying to identify is what's the likelihood that if I accept this offer, it'll go all the way to the closing table. As an example, we run into the following all of the time. We may list a property for $400,000 and we get such demand that we get offers for $410,000, $430,000, $440,000, $450,000, and on and on and on. Well, there's a certain point there that we really need to understand, hey, if somebody's offering us $480,000, what's the likelihood that we can actually take this to the closing table? So the things that I look for in that particular situation is how experienced is the other side? Is this a brand new real estate agent that is basically putting anything on paper, trying to get the offer accepted? Or I'm also looking for what's the strength of this loan? So that's where I do reach out to the lender and try to understand, hey, in the event that this home does not appraise, does this potential home buyer have funds to cover the difference? Now, we'll talk about the appraisal a little bit more in detail in the following section. But for now, let's talk about the things to consider. Again, price is super important. The closing date is super important. Is somebody giving you a 7-day turnaround? Like, can you close in 7 days? Well, technically you could, but if you're getting financing as an example, that's probably not going to happen unless you have hard money. Now, if you're not sure what hard money is, don't worry about it. That's topic for another video. Just understand that if you are accepting a cash offer, realistically, you can close on that home for, let's say, 7 to 14 days. You can realistically close within those 2 weeks. Now, if you get an offer where they're financing, in other words, they're getting a lender involved, then you're probably looking at 21 to 30 days to get financing. You should also be looking at how much money they're looking to put down. This is why it's important to reach out to the lender. You want to see some level of financial strength, some financial certainty that if something were to go a little bit wrong, well, does this potential buyer have enough to cover that mistake? Now, there might also be some contingencies that they put in there, such as, hey, I just need to sell my house before I can buy yours. Well, if you go under contract on a contingency offer, then that changes things slightly for you. So just look at these variables. It's impossible to cover every single scenario, but for the most part, the one thing that I want you to understand is please verify where the funds are coming from, and also take the offer in its totality, not just looking at the price as being the only indicator if you're going to accept it or not. So while I can't get into too many specifics of the terms that you need to be looking out for, given that every single transaction is different, what I can do is give you different things to look for in the offer. Now, I've probably said this for the 6th time already, but I am in Texas, so that's what we're going to be going off of. Now, of course, with every offer, there's going to be the sales price, how much they're offering for the purchase of the home. And you're going to want to look at the difference between how much they're putting down and how much they're financing. In this particular case, it's 5% with this example. Now, there's no rule of thumb here. Of course, more money that the buyer does in down payment, the stronger the potential buyer in that particular regard. But there's no percentage that I look for. But it's something that I do take into consideration. Now, it's also customary, at least here in Texas, to have an earnest money down. So this is money that goes over to the seller immediately. So as an example, if you're accepting an offer from a potential buyer, then you could ask for earnest money. So think of it like a deposit. Think of essentially a little bit of layaway. So earnest money is the deposit is another way to look at it, where the buyer is showing intent and seriousness by putting some money down into the deal. Now, again, this earnest money goes directly to you that will then be credited at the sale of the home. And this is actually what is at stake if the potential buyer doesn't perform. In other words, if they break the contract, then this is up for grabs. So the higher the amount in earnest, the more serious the buyer is. Now, in this particular regard, I do see 1% quite a bit. That is common. So 1% of the offer price or the sales price. You can also agree ahead of time of the title company that you're going to use and who's going to pay for that title policy. Now, title policy is something that I'll record another video on in and of itself, but I just want to give you the elements again that are common to see in potential deals. And to give you an idea of how much a title policy would actually cost you, just multiply whatever you're being offered in sales price times 0.7%, and that's a reasonable approximate cost for a title. Now, in the event that something needs to get modified with title, then you also need to determine who is going to be paying for that. In the same way that you're going to determine who pays for the survey. If you happen to have a survey right out of the gate, that's perfect. That's something that really is not going to be too material. But if you don't have a survey, then you do want to call out who's going to be paying for that. A survey, depending on the price and a few other things, you can expect to pay about $600. That's the cost of a survey. And you see that here, I factor that into our calculator. Now, these are more terms. Depending on the contract that you use, this is probably not going to come up in the contract that you're using unless you're using the real estate commission one, which you do need to have the appropriate credentials to use that one. It's not that you can just use it willy-nilly without getting in trouble. That is a contract that is for real estate agents, for realtors. So I'm not going to cover this at length, and I'm also not going to cover the sales disclosure of when you need to send that over, but I am going to cover the home warranty credit. It is customary, at least in the contracts that we're using, for there to be a credit for to use for home warranties. Now, you can ask for anything under the sun in terms of the credit, or you will be asked for anything under the sun because you're on the selling side. So it's not unreasonable for a buyer to ask for a certain amount of money back in the form of a home warranty credit. So this is something that they can then use to buy a home warranty, at least for the first year. You also want to factor in how many days for closing. So this is something that is going to be spelled out in the contract right out front. Hey, I want to offer X amount. These are the terms, and I'm willing to close in 25 days, 28 days, 29 days, whatever it happens to be. And something else that's very customary and something super important is the option period. The option period is typically 5 to 7 days, and the option fee for that option period can be anywhere from $100 to $250. It really does vary. So to better understand what the option period is, I'm going to table that for the next section. What I really want to convey here before we wrap up this particular section is that everything is negotiable. Everything really is negotiable. You can, of course, negotiate the price, the terms, timeline, everything. So whenever you receive an offer, it's okay to counter back with your offer. So this is what we're going to call negotiation number 1. This is going to be the first negotiation, one of 3 that we're going to detail. So for our purposes today, let's assume that that offer that we just received is going to be the one that we accept. So when we accept that offer, now we go to step number 6, and that's contract to close. At that point, both you and the buyer are collaborating to take this to the finish line. So once that contract to purchase has been executed, you're going to take that contract and any other addendum, and you're going to take it over to the title company and also to the lender. So primarily 2 real estate professionals that you're going to be working with are going to be that title company and the lenders. Now here again, since I'm in Texas, we're a title state. There might be some of you that are watching that are in a different state that you're closing with attorneys. And what the title company does for us in our transactions is verifying the ownership and essentially issues an insurance that whatever piece of property is being sold can legally be sold, and that the buyer that's about to buy that property is going to become the legal owner. So in the event that something happens down the road where a distant cousin comes out of the woodwork and contests that future homeowner, hey, this was my property, the title company will take care of that. That's the insurance. That's the title policy that the title company issues. And it's also the place and the entity that actually coordinates the closing. Now, depending on how the buyer is financing the purchase, you're probably going to be working with the lender as well. Now, you as the homeowner, you're not going to really have a lot of communication between the lender and yourself. But now let's talk about what happens when you're under contract and the timeline for a second. Remember, as you were receiving these offers and going back and forth negotiating, you were essentially working on negotiation number 1. That's where the big items get agreed upon. The price, when it's closing, what title company you're using, and on and on. And typically, at least here in Texas, you're going to go straight into what's called the option period. This option period is something that the buyer uses to do some additional due diligence on the condition of the home. This when the buyer will hire a professional home inspector to inspect the property. And this inspector will check the electricity, the plumbing, the roof, the foundation, and a ton of other items, who will then submit a report back to that potential home buyer to know what is going on, what's the condition of the property. It's at this point that the home buyer now has a clearer picture on the condition of your home. And whether you like it or not, it's customary for them to ask for you to address certain things that come up that they had no way of knowing, or asking for a credit for them to fix whatever it is that they found. Now here again, this is a negotiation. You can absolutely receive that request from that potential homebuyer and tell them to pound sand. Or you can be a little bit more flexible and negotiate some of the items that they're asking for. It's during this option period where that potential homebuyer has the option to get right out of the contract. Now again, it's something that they pay for, so they're paying a certain amount for a certain amount of days for them to do some additional due diligence on that house. And throughout that entire option period, they can get out of that contract for any and all reasons. But for the most part, what ends up happening after that report goes back to that home buyer will ask for a few things to be addressed by the home seller. And then that home seller will negotiate a few things that they're willing to do or not do. And that's either in the form of fixing the things that are being asked for, or crediting the buyer so the buyer can fix them when they close. Now again, it's important to remember that the option period is negotiable, and from the buyer's perspective, they're paying a certain amount of money for a certain amount of days to do this due diligence. Now once that option period is over, it's less likely that the buyer is going to get out of that contract. Now there's other ways to get out of the contract, at least with the contracts that we use, but for the most part, a lot of the heavy lifting now, both from the buyer side and the seller side, is going to be trying to get to that closing table. From your standpoint as the homeowner and the home seller, you're going to be working mostly with the title company. You're going to be presenting documentation, signing off on things that the title company sends you. This is why I suggested that on step one, you get all of your documentation in order, because this can really help you when you're communicating with the title company. And from the buyer side, they are going to also be working with the title company, but mostly they're going to be working very closely with the lender. It's at this point where they're working their hardest to try to close on that loan. But again, this is more for you as a homeowner. This is you selling your house without a real estate agent. So I'm not going to get into everything from the buyer side. The only thing that I'm going to say from that side of the equation is bringing back up the topic of the appraisal, which what I tell my clients is going to be an opportunity for negotiation number 3. Negotiation number 2 happens during the option period. And negotiation number 3 is when the lender orders the appraisal on your home and that appraisal value comes back. So here's what happens. Let's just say you're under contract to sell your house for $420,000. And the lender orders an appraisal on the value of your home, because they're not going to just lend on any value of the home. So the appraiser is going to go out to your property and it's going to go do a formal appraisal on the value of your home. And then the appraiser says, hey, I understand that this home is under contract for $420,000, but it's actually not worth that much. It's worth $400,000. So now the buyer and you by proxy are in a predicament, because both of you, buyer and seller, agree to sell that property for $420,000. However, that lender is not going to lend beyond $400,000 on that purchase. It's in that $20,000 that the third negotiation comes into play. If that were to happen, there's 4 outcomes that are possible. Number 1, that buyer can opt out of that contract because the home didn't appraise. Now, I am generalizing, and I'm also really speaking more from the Texas Real Estate Commission contract. There's a few things that do need to be checked off. That's why it's so important that you're actually working with a real estate professional, so you are protecting yourself from both sides, from the buyer side and the seller side. But that first option is totally a viable one where the buyer can just walk away. So you as a homeowner have to start all over again. You're going to go back out onto the market and start negotiating again and try to get under contract and sell your house again. The second outcome is you as a home seller, you would say, okay, well, I know we're under contract for $420,000 and the value of the home based off of this appraiser is $400,000. So I'll sell it to you for $400,000. Now you're probably not going to do that, but you're going to be surprised given the circumstances that you might find yourself. You might end up having to, not because you legally have to, but more of the circumstances. Example, if you're already under contract to buy another house, well, you need the funds for the one that you're selling right now, in order to close. So for you, it might be a tough pill to swallow, but you might end up swallowing that pill because you need to. Now, the third outcome that might come out of that situation is that the buyer will say, no problem, I'm just gonna make up the difference. If the buyer were to do that, then they would have to come out of pocket those additional $20,000 in order to close. And the fourth outcome, and the most common outcome, is that you meet somewhere in the middle. You might be more motivated to close that deal, so you might be willing to concede more. But again, the main thing here is that there's some negotiation that happens. Now, the last part that I want to cover here in this particular step is that at the same time that you're working with the title company, also work in getting out of the house. Folks, I cannot count the number of times that I have to remind our homeowners that you need to be out of that house by the time that we close. Because by that time we get to that closing table and both parties sign and that money hits your bank account, you're not going back to that property. So please schedule accordingly. Make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to get out of the house, which brings us right into step number 7, and that is the final walkthrough. Before actually closing on the transaction, the buyer is most likely going to ask to do a final walkthrough of the property that they're about to purchase. And this is something that happens usually the day before or the day of closing. The buyer ultimately wants to ensure that the house's condition hasn't changed, that you haven't destroyed the entire walls whenever you're moving out, and is also going to take that opportunity to verify that you haven't taken down the chandeliers, that you haven't taken out things that you probably weren't supposed to. Again, you would be surprised at the things that happen. So I'm going to suggest to you the same thing that I suggest to my clients. Whenever we're selling, we're not really trying to meet the deadline of the actual closing day. We want to be out of the house before that final walkthrough altogether. We don't want to leave everything to the final hour because things can happen. I'll give you an example. In a recent transaction where we represented the buyers, the closing didn't go as smoothly as we wanted because the homeowners waited too long to get the movers out to their property. And in that final day that they had to move, their moving truck actually broke down. So they had to take everything out of that moving truck into another one, and they had to work all through the night. So don't let that be you. Give yourself plenty of time. And then step number 8, close on the home. Both of the parties will sign on the same day. Now, if you cannot make it for signing, let's just say you've already moved across the state, you can close remotely. On closing day, you're gonna go to the title company with your ID and any documents that they asked you to bring along. And it's also a good idea to go ahead and bring your keys and anything that the buyers are gonna need to access the property. Now, it really doesn't matter the order of the signing. You might go in that morning to sign everything, or the home buyer might go in that morning. It really doesn't matter. It could be you first, or it could be the buyers. But once both signatures are there and everything checks out from the title company and the lender, if there happens to be one, then the actual sale happens with the money going straight into your account, which at that point means that you have successfully sold your house without a real estate agent. Now, as mentioned earlier, I am a licensed real estate agent. So if all that we just talked through just does not sound appealing and you do not want to go it alone, our contact information is down below. I and the rest of my team can personally help you here in the state of Texas. Now, if you're in another state and have a real estate transaction that you're wanting to complete, my referral partners would be happy to take care of you. So again, our contact information is down below, and if we can help you in any way, let us know.